I never imagined how quickly everything could unravel in just a few hours. That morning started like any other, with the hum of the city sneaking through the cracked window and the faint scent of stale coffee lingering in the air. But beneath the surface, something was already simmering, an invisible tension that no one dared to acknowledge outright. By mid-morning, the atmosphere in the office was thick with unspoken grievances. I could feel the weight of every glance exchanged, every half-finished sentence hanging dangerously between us. The usual hum of keyboards and casual chatter felt replaced by a brittle silence, as if we were all waiting for a spark. That spark arrived unexpectedly in the form of a seemingly innocuous comment during the team meeting. Our manager, usually calm and composed, made a passing remark that triggered something deep within one of the senior members. His reaction was immediate, sharp, and unmistakably hostile. The room froze as his voice rose, cutting through the tension like a knife. The accusation was direct, personal, and it hung in the air with a weight that made everyone uncomfortable. I could almost hear the collective breath catch around me, a shared realization that this was no longer just a disagreement, it was a battle. Suddenly, alliances shifted like sand beneath our feet. People who had been friendly moments before now exchanged cold stares. The manager tried to regain control, but his words fell flat against the rising tide of anger and frustration that erupted in the room. In the chaos, I noticed how the office itself seemed to close in on us. The walls, once just background, now felt like they were pressing down, amplifying every raised voice and heated exchange. The scattered papers on the table fluttered as if mirroring the unrest in the air. One of the junior members, usually quiet and reserved, suddenly found her voice. Her words cut through the noise, exposing long-held grievances about favoritism and broken promises. It was like opening a floodgate, and soon everyone was shouting, their pent-up frustrations pouring out in a torrent. I caught a glimpse of the rival across the room, his smug expression morphing into something darker, more dangerous. He seemed to thrive on the chaos, pushing others further into the fray with pointed comments and subtle provocations. Amid the shouting, I felt my own heart pounding, caught between the urge to confront and the fear of being pulled under by the storm. It was as if the room was spinning, the voices blurring together into a relentless roar that drowned out all reason. At one point, a chair toppled over with a loud crash, jolting us all back to the present. The noise was a physical manifestation of the fragility of the moment, how close we were to losing control entirely. But by then, control was already a distant memory. The manager's attempts to mediate grew more desperate, his usual authority slipping through his fingers like sand. He called for calm, but his voice trembled with the strain of trying to hold a crumbling team together. Someone slammed a fist on the table, making the scattered papers leap into the air. The impact echoed 1,000 unspoken frustrations, a collective cry that this couldn't go on, but no one knew how to stop it, how to reclaim what had been lost. I looked around at the faces, some red with anger, others pale with shock, and realized that the day we had all taken for granted was slipping through our fingers. Relationships were fracturing in real time, and beneath the noise, a deep sadness was settling in. Outside the window, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, unaware of the small war raging within these four walls. The fading light cast long shadows that seemed to creep into every corner of the room, mirroring the darkness spreading through our group. In the middle of it all, I caught sight of the rival's eyes, cold, calculating, and unrepentant. It was clear he had been waiting for this moment, ready to seize the opportunity to shift the balance of power in his favor. One of the quieter members tried to intervene, her voice steady but barely heard over the din. She spoke of respect and teamwork, trying to remind us of what we had before the fight began. But her words felt fragile, almost desperate, against the tide of anger. Suddenly, the phone on the desk buzzed with a message. Everyone paused, the tension momentarily broken by a mundane distraction. But the brief lull only served to remind us how fragile the peace truly was. The message was from the top executives, an urgent call to address the growing discord. It was as if the outside world was pressing down on us, demanding answers we didn't have and solutions we couldn't find. The manager's face tightened at the message, his jaw clenched in frustration and fatigue. He glanced around the room, as if weighing how much more damage could be done before everything collapsed completely. I felt an overwhelming wave of exhaustion wash over me. The emotional roller coaster was draining every ounce of energy, and yet the conflict showed no signs of letting up. It was like being trapped in a storm with no shelter in sight. At some point, voices started to lower, the shouting replaced by bitter accusations and cutting sarcasm. The venom in the words stung sharper than any raised voice, revealing how deep the wounds really were. I noticed one of the senior members wiping a tear away, her expression a mix of anger and heartbreak. It struck me how personal this had all become, how the battle for power was really a battle for dignity and respect. The rival's smirk never faded, even as others crumbled. He seemed untouchable, as if the chaos was fuel for his ambitions. Watching him was like watching a predator circle its prey, patient and relentless. The manager finally called for a break, his voice firm but weary. It was a small reprieve, a chance to catch our breath and maybe, just maybe, to regroup before the next round. As we filtered out of the room, the tension lingered like a thick fog. No one spoke much, words felt heavy, loaded with meaning we weren't ready to confront yet. The damage was done, even if the final consequences were still unclear. Outside, the cool air hit my face, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The day was far from over, but that moment of quiet felt like the eye of the storm, a brief pause before whatever came next. I found myself standing alone by the window, staring out at the city lights flickering on as dusk turned to night. It was strange to feel so disconnected from the world outside when everything inside was unraveling so completely. My phone buzzed again, this time a message from a colleague. "Are you okay?" It was a simple question, but it hit me hard, because no one really was okay, not after today. I typed back a quick reply, unsure if I was trying to reassure or just hold on to some semblance of normalcy. The screen's glow felt cold against the darkness settling in my chest. As I turned away from the window, I caught sight of the overturned chair in the corner of the room. It was a silent testament to how far things had spiraled, an ordinary object transformed into a symbol of chaos. Walking back inside, I felt the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation, every silent accusation hanging in the air. It was clear that the power struggles of the day had changed everything, and none of us would be the same. I could hear muffled voices beyond the closed doors, fragments of heated discussions spilling out. It was like the conflict was multiplying, infecting every corner of the building with its relentless energy. Suddenly, a loud knock on the door startled me. It was the manager, his face drawn and tired but resolute. He motioned for me to follow him into his office, away from the chaos. Inside, the quiet was almost unnatural after the storm outside. He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair as he tried to find words that could make sense of the wreckage we'd just witnessed. He spoke of consequences and accountability, of the urgent need to rebuild trust and find a way forward. But I could see the doubt flickering in his eyes, the uncertainty about whether it was even possible. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the day pressing down on both of us. It was one of those rare moments when the usual roles fell away and all that was left was raw, human vulnerability. As I left his office, I realized the day was far from over. The fallout was just beginning, and the real challenge would be navigating the aftermath when every choice felt like a minefield. Back in the hallway, I overheard whispers of resignation and threats of leaving. The cracks in the team were deeper than any of us had admitted, and it was clear that some relationships were beyond repair. I thought about the junior member who had spoken out earlier, the courage it took to expose the truth in such a hostile environment. Her bravery was a stark contrast to the fear and bitterness that had infected so many others. The rival's influence was unmistakable now, his subtle manipulations having pushed the group to the brink. Watching him maneuver through the chaos was like watching a master chess player who had just set the final trap. I found myself questioning my own place in the madness, whether I was just a bystander caught in the crossfire or someone who could make a difference. The lines between friend and foe blurred in the heat of the battle. The office felt colder now, the warmth of camaraderie replaced by suspicion and guarded glances. It was a harsh reminder of how quickly trust can erode when power and pride collide. As night deepened, a few of us gathered quietly in the break room, nursing lukewarm coffee and trying to piece together what had gone wrong. The conversation was low and tentative, as if afraid to ignite another fire. I shared what I had seen, the moments that had pushed us over the edge, hoping that acknowledging the truth might be the first step toward healing. But the silence that followed spoke volumes about how far we still had to go. Outside, the city lights twinkled like indifferent stars, oblivious to the turmoil beneath. It was a strange contrast, life moving on while ours felt stuck in a painful, uncertain stasis. Sleep was elusive that night. My mind replayed every argument, every hurtful word, every fleeting moment of hope that had been crushed by reality. The day had left a mark that wouldn't fade easily. I woke before dawn, the quiet of the early morning offering a fragile sense of peace. But even in the stillness, the echoes of the previous day lingered, a reminder that the battle was far from over. As I prepared for the new day, a knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. The power struggles that had consumed us weren't just a moment. They were a symptom of something deeper, more complex, and far more dangerous. I knew that moving forward would require more than just apologies and meetings. It would demand courage, honesty, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths we had all been avoiding. Looking back, I realized that the day everything fell apart was also the day everything changed. The old ways of doing things were no longer enough, and the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with risk. But even in the midst of chaos, I caught glimpses of resilience, a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild from the ruins. It was a fragile promise, but one worth holding on to. The story didn't end there. In fact, it was just beginning. And as I stepped into the unknown, I knew that the choices we made next would define not just the future of our team, but of each of us individually. The power struggles that day were more than a conflict over control. They were a mirror reflecting our fears, our failures, and our humanity. And facing that truth was the hardest battle of all. I often think about that day, how quickly everything changed, how fragile trust can be, and how the desire for power can both unite and destroy. It's a lesson I carry with me, a reminder to tread carefully in the delicate dance of human relationships. And yet, despite all the pain and turmoil, there's something compelling about the raw honesty of those moments. They strip away pretenses and force us to confront who we really are beneath the surface. That day remains a vivid memory, etched into my mind with all its chaos and complexity. It's a story of conflict, loss, and the struggle to find meaning amidst the rubble. I'm sharing it because I believe that in the messiness of power struggles, there are truths worth hearing. Maybe in hearing them, we can find a way to heal, to grow, and to rebuild stronger than before. So here I am, still navigating the aftermath, still learning how to balance ambition with empathy, strength with vulnerability. The journey is far from over, but I'm ready to face whatever comes next. The day everything fell apart was a turning point, a moment when the fragile threads holding us together snapped, leaving us to pick up the pieces and decide what kind of future we wanted to build. And as I look ahead, I know that power struggles will arise again. But now, I carry the scars and the lessons, a reminder that beneath every battle is a chance for understanding and change. This story is not just about conflict, it's about the resilience of the human spirit, the complexity of relationships, and the courage it takes to face our darkest moments head-on. I don't have all the answers, and I don't pretend to, but I do know that sharing these experiences is a step toward breaking the cycle and finding a better way forward. So if you've ever found yourself caught in a similar storm, know that you're not alone. Power struggles are messy, painful, and exhausting, but they also reveal who we really are when everything is on the line. And maybe, just maybe, in that raw honesty, we can find the strength to rebuild, not just our teams, but ourselves. The day everything fell apart changed us all, but it also opened the door to something new, something uncertain but full of possibility, and that's where this story continues. I'll keep sharing what I learn along the way, because the truth is messy and complicated, but it's worth telling. And who knows, maybe someone out there will find a piece of their own story in mine. For now, I'm just taking it one day at a time, holding on to the hope that even in the darkest moments, there's a path to light and a chance to rebuild stronger than before. After all, power struggles don't have to mean the end. Sometimes they mark the beginning of something new. And with that thought, I'm ready to face whatever comes next. But this isn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. The real test is still ahead, and I'm bracing myself for the challenges to come. Because when everything falls apart, the hardest part isn't the breaking, it's the rebuilding. And that's exactly what we have to do. So here I stand, amid the ruins, wondering what the next chapter holds. The power struggles have left their mark, but they haven't defined us yet. The real story is still unfolding. And somehow, I know it will be worth telling. Because even in the darkest storms, there's always a glimmer of hope. And sometimes, that's all we need to keep going. So here's to the struggle, the pain, and the messy, beautiful chaos of being human. Here's to the day everything fell apart. And here's to whatever comes next. Because the story is far from over. And I'm still here, ready to write the next page. One moment at a time. One choice at a time. One step at a time. Because that's how we survive. That's how we grow. That's how we rebuild. And that's exactly what I intend to do. The day everything fell apart will always be a part of me. But it won't be the whole story. Because even in the wreckage, there's a chance to rise again. And I plan to take it. No matter how hard it gets. No matter how long it takes. Because sometimes falling apart is the only way to come back stronger. And that's exactly what I'm aiming for. So here's my story, raw and real and unfinished. The day everything fell apart. And the days that followed. Because this is just the beginning. And I'm ready to face it head-on. With all the messiness, the pain, and the hope. Because that's what it means to be human. And that's what it means to keep going. no matter what. So I'll keep telling the story. Because sometimes sharing the struggle is the first step to healing. And I hope that by sharing mine, it helps someone else with theirs. Because in the end, that's what connection is all about. Finding strength in each other, even when everything falls apart. Especially then. And that's where I am now. In the middle of it all. Not broken, not healed. Just trying to find my way. One day, one moment, one breath at a time. Because that's all we can do. And somehow, that's enough.